The stars looked peaceful from the bridge of the EDS Liberty as Captain Jake Morrison watched the distant lights of alien worlds. He had been out here in deep space for 6 months now, patrolling the borders of human territory like countless other Earth Defense Force ships. The galaxy was supposed to be a safe place these days, governed by laws that had kept peace for thousands of years. Jake thought about those laws as he sipped his coffee and watched his crew work at their stations. The most important rule was simple enough that even a child could understand it. No alien race could ever invade and take over another race's home planet. This law had been written in stone and metal on every major space station in the galaxy. Every species that joined the Galactic Council had to promise to follow this rule above all others. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez looked up from her tactical station with worry in her eyes. She had been monitoring alien ship movements for weeks now, and the patterns were getting stranger each day. The Zephyrians, a war-loving species from far across the galaxy, had been moving their fleets closer to human space. At first, their ships had stayed in their own territory, but recently they had been testing the borders and sending scout ships into neutral zones. "Captain, I'm seeing more Zephyrian ships moving toward the outer edge of our system," Amy reported, her fingers dancing across her control panel. "They're not crossing into our space yet, but they're getting close, really close." Jake set down his coffee cup and walked over to look at her display screen. The tactical map showed dozens of red dots representing enemy ships, all moving in the same direction, toward Earth. The sight made his stomach feel cold. He had studied the Zephyrians during his training at the military academy on Earth. They were tall, gray-skinned aliens with sharp teeth and a culture built around conquest. They believed that strong species should rule over weak ones, and they thought humans were weak. The Zephyrians had joined the Galactic Council only 20 years ago, much later than most other species. They had agreed to follow the laws about not invading homeworlds, but everyone knew they didn't really believe in those rules. Their leader, War Commander Thrackmore, had made speeches about how some species didn't deserve to keep their planets if they couldn't defend them properly. Jake had heard rumors from other ship captains about strange things happening on the outer rim of the galaxy, planets that had suddenly gone quiet, their communication signals stopping without explanation. When other ships went to investigate, they found empty worlds with signs of battle but no bodies. The Galactic Council had sent investigation teams, but their reports were classified. Whatever was happening out there, the Council didn't want regular people to know about it. "Amy, send a message to Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Tell them what we're seeing out here. Include all the sensor data about Zephyrian fleet movements." While Amy worked on the message, Jake thought about Earth and the people living there. His sister lived in Chicago with her 2 kids. His parents had a small farm in Kansas where they grew corn and raised cattle. None of them had ever seen an alien in person, though they had watched news reports about humanity joining the Galactic Council 5 years ago. Earth was supposed to be safe now, protected by laws that had kept peace in the galaxy for thousands of years. The communication officer, Sergeant Dave Collins, turned around in his chair with a concerned look. "Captain, I'm picking up a lot of encrypted messages between Zephyrian ships. The computer can't break the code, but the message volume is way higher than normal. Something big is happening." Jake nodded and walked back to his captain's chair. He had been in the Earth Defense Force for 15 years. Starting as a young pilot fresh out of the academy, he had worked his way up through the ranks, serving on different ships and learning how to fight in space. But all of his training had been focused on defending human colonies from pirates or dealing with accidents and emergencies. No one had ever seriously planned for a full-scale alien invasion of Earth itself. The idea was supposed to be impossible. The Galactic Council's laws were clear, and every species had agreed to follow them. Even the most aggressive aliens understood that breaking the homeworld rule would mean war with every other species in the galaxy. It would be suicide for any one race to try it. But as Jake looked at the tactical display showing more and more Zephyrian ships gathering near human space, he began to wonder if War Commander Thrackmore was crazy enough to try it anyway. The Zephyrian military was strong, with advanced weapons and shields that could match anything humans had built. Their ships were faster and their soldiers were trained from childhood to fight and kill. "Captain, incoming message from Earth Command," Dave reported. "Admiral Lisa Chen wants to speak with you directly." Jake's heart beat faster. Admiral Chen was one of the highest-ranking officers in the Earth Defense Force. She only talked directly to ship captains when something really serious was happening. Jake straightened his uniform and nodded to Dave to put the message through. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen, her expression grim and tired. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes who had been defending Earth since before humans even knew aliens existed. "Captain Morrison, I've received your report about Zephyrian fleet movements. I want you to know that we're seeing the same patterns from multiple sources. Something is definitely happening." "What are your orders, Admiral?" Jake asked. "Continue. Monitoring and send updates every 4 hours. Do not engage unless directly attacked, but be ready for anything. We're recalling all Earth Defense Force ships to defensive positions around the solar system. The Galactic Council is meeting an emergency session, but frankly, I don't think they're going to be much help if the Zephyrians decide to break the rules." The connection ended, leaving Jake and his crew staring at a blank screen. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of the ship's engines and the beeping of various control panels. Everyone understood what the Admiral had not said directly. The Zephyrians were preparing to do something that had never been done before in galactic history. They were going to attack Earth itself. Jake looked out at the stars again, but now they didn't seem peaceful at all. Somewhere out there in the darkness, alien ships were preparing for war. And Earth, the blue planet where humans had evolved and built their civilization, was about to become the target of the largest invasion in galactic history. The first Zephyrian ships appeared at the edge of the solar system 3 days later, like dark shadows against the stars. Admiral Lisa Chen watched the tactical display in Earth Defense Command as hundreds of red dots materialized beyond Pluto's orbit. The enemy fleet was massive, far larger than anything the intelligence reports had suggested. Her coffee grew cold as she counted the ships on her screen. Captain Pete Sullivan was commanding the orbital defense station Atlas when the long-range sensors picked up the invasion fleet. He had been expecting this moment ever since Captain Morrison's warning, but seeing it happen still made his hands shake. The Zephyrian ships were beautiful in a deadly way, with sleek hulls that gleamed like silver knives and weapon ports that glowed with dangerous energy. The enemy commander's message came through on all communication channels at exactly noon Earth time. War Commander Thrakmor's face filled screens across the planet, his gray skin marked with ritual scars and his yellow eyes burning with cold hatred. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding metal, translated into perfect English by the ship's computer systems. "Humans of the planet called Earth," Thrakmor began. "Your species has been judged by the Zephyrian Empire and found wanting. You are weak creatures who do not deserve the gift of galactic citizenship. Your technology is primitive, your military is laughable, and your culture is soft and worthless. We give you 72 hours to surrender your world completely. Evacuate your leaders to the ships we will provide, and the rest of your population will be relocated to work camps on distant worlds. If you refuse, we will destroy every human city and kill every human child. Your Galactic Council cannot help you now." The transmission ended, leaving billions of humans staring at blank screens in shock and terror. Admiral Chen immediately activated the emergency protocols that would contact every member of the Galactic Council. Surely the other alien species would respond to this massive violation of their most sacred law. The Homeworld Protection Rule had kept peace in the galaxy for thousands of years. Every civilized species would have to defend it. But as the hours passed, the responses from Earth's supposed allies were disappointing and full of excuses. The aquatic keepers of Aquarius sent a message saying their ships moved too slowly through space to arrive in time to help. The silicon-based builders of Titan Prime claimed they were having technical problems with their fleet and could not launch any ships. The insect-like Hive Collective said they needed time to make decisions and hold meetings. One by one, every species in the Galactic Council found reasons why they could not send military help to Earth. Some claimed their ships were too far away. Others said they needed more time to prepare. A few suggested that maybe humans should consider negotiating with the Zephyrians instead of fighting them. Dr. Karen White worked frantically in her underground laboratory in the Colorado mountains, studying every piece of Zephyrian technology that humans had managed to capture over the years. As Earth's leading expert on alien biology and technology, she was humanity's best hope for finding a weakness in the enemy's advanced weapons and defenses. Her team of scientists worked around the clock, taking apart alien devices and looking for any flaw they could exploit. What Karen discovered made her both excited and terrified. The Zephyrian weapons were incredibly advanced, using energy sources that human science barely understood. Their shields could stop the most powerful human missiles and plasma cannons. Their ships could travel faster than anything in the Earth Defense Force fleet, but there was something strange about how all their technology worked together. Every Zephyrian device she studied was connected to every other device through quantum communication links. Their weapons, shields, engines, and computers all shared information instantly across vast distances. This made their fleets incredibly coordinated and efficient, but it also created a potential weakness. If someone could find a way to disrupt those quantum connections, the entire Zephyrian fleet might become confused and disorganized. Captain Morrison brought the EDS Liberty back to Earth as quickly as possible, along with every other human ship in deep space. The Earth Defense Force had about 200 vessels of various sizes, from small patrol boats to massive battleships like Morrison's command. It was an impressive fleet by human standards, but tiny compared to the Zephyrian armada that now surrounded the solar system. The enemy ships began moving closer to Earth, taking up positions near Mars and the asteroid belt. Their formation was perfect, with larger ships in the center protected by rings of smaller vessels. Every human military officer who looked at the display could see that the Zephyrians had done this many times before. They knew exactly how to invade and conquer a planet. President Helen Carter called an emergency meeting of Earth's world leaders in the deep underground bunkers beneath Washington. Representatives from every nation gathered to decide humanity's response to the ultimatum. Some argued for surrender, saying that resistance would only lead to the complete destruction of human civilization. Others demanded that Earth fight back, no matter how hopeless the situation appeared. The debate went on for hours while precious time ticked away. Outside, ordinary people around the world watched the news reports and tried to prepare for whatever was coming. Some families tried to flee to remote areas where they might hide from the invasion. Others gathered in cities, believing that staying together was their best chance for survival. Major Beth Collins commanded a regiment of Earth Defense Force Marines stationed in New York City. She and her soldiers had been preparing defensive positions throughout the city, setting up weapon emplacements and communication centers in buildings and subway tunnels. Beth had studied every report about Zephyrian ground forces, and she knew that human soldiers would be badly outmatched in direct combat. But as Beth looked out at the millions of people in her city, she realized something that the Zephyrians probably did not understand about humans. These were not just soldiers and civilians waiting to be conquered. These were people who had built this city with their own hands, who had families and friends and dreams they would fight to protect. The aliens might have superior technology, but they had never faced anything like human determination. As the 72-hour deadline approached, Earth's leaders finally reached their decision. President Carter would address the world and give humanity's answer to the Zephyrian ultimatum. The message would be broadcast to every human on Earth and throughout the colonies, and it would also be sent directly to War Commander Thrackmore's flagship. The aliens were about to learn that humans had their own rules about what could and could not be taken. President Helen Carter stood in the underground command center beneath Washington, looking at the camera that would carry her words to every human on Earth and beyond. The 72-hour deadline was only minutes away, and the Zephyrian fleet had moved even closer to Earth, their weapons powered up and ready to fire. Behind her, military advisors and government officials waited to hear what their leader would tell the galaxy. "Citizens of Earth and all human colonies," President Carter began, her voice calm and strong despite the impossible situation. "The Zephyrian Empire has demanded our surrender, believing that humanity will bow down when faced with superior numbers and advanced technology. They think we are weak because we value peace and cooperation over conquest and war. They are about to learn the biggest mistake any species can make about the human race. The transmission was sent on all frequencies, reaching not just Earth but every human settlement in space and every alien monitoring station in the galaxy. Carter's next words would be remembered for generations, spoken by a woman who refused to let her species become slaves to alien conquerors. "We will not surrender our world. We will not abandon our home. We will not kneel before any empire that believes might makes right. Earth has been our home for millions of years, and it will remain our home until the last human draws breath. Let the Zephyrians come. Let them test their strength against our will. They will discover that some things in this universe cannot be conquered, cannot be broken, and cannot be taken. Earth stands, and Earth will always stand." The first battle began exactly 1 hour later in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Captain Morrison led a small task force of 20 Earth Defense Force ships against the Zephyrian advance guard. The human vessels were outnumbered 3-1, but Morrison had studied the enemy formations and found something interesting in their attack patterns. The Zephyrians flew in perfect formations, each ship maintaining precise distances and angles relative to the others. Their tactics were flawless according to every military textbook ever written, with overlapping fields of fire and mutually supporting positions. But Morrison had learned something during his years of fighting space pirates and raiders. Perfect. Formations only worked when your enemy followed the same rules you did. "All ships break formation and attack independently," Morrison ordered over the communication system. "Do not maintain standard spacing. Do not follow textbook maneuvers. Make it impossible for them to predict what we're going to do next." The human ships scattered like a pack of wild animals, each captain choosing his own path through the asteroid field. The USS Defiance, commanded by Captain Rick Turner, dove below the plane of battle and came up underneath a Zephyrian destroyer. Instead of exchanging fire at long range like civilized opponents, Turner rammed his ship's reinforced nose directly into the alien vessel's engine section. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire and twisted metal, but Turner's sacrifice took out 2 more enemy vessels caught in the blast. His final transmission was heard by every human ship in the battle. "That's how we do things on Earth." Commander Danny Price led a squadron of small fighter craft against the largest Zephyrian ship in the formation. His pilots had trained for years to fight in space, but they had also grown up on Earth playing violent video games and watching action movies. When their missiles ran out and their energy weapons overheated, they did something that no alien military manual had ever considered. They used their fighter craft as guided missiles, ramming them into critical points on the enemy ship's hull. Price himself flew his damaged fighter directly into the Zephyrian command center, destroying the ship's bridge and killing everyone inside. The massive vessel spun out of control and crashed into an asteroid, creating a spectacular explosion that could be seen from Earth. The Zephyrians had never encountered anything like human tactics. Every species they had conquered before fought in predictable ways, using standard military formations and trying to minimize casualties. Humans seemed to view their own deaths as just another weapon to be used against their enemies. Dr. Karen White made a breakthrough in her laboratory while the first battle raged in space. She had discovered that all Zephyrian technology operated on quantum frequencies that could be disrupted by specific electromagnetic pulses. Better yet, their weapons and shields were all connected to central power distribution systems that prioritized efficiency over backup redundancy. "It's like they built their entire military around the idea that nothing could go wrong," Karen explained to Admiral Chen over a secure video link. "Every system depends on every other system. If we can create cascade failures in their power networks, their ships will become helpless." Karen's team had developed a virus-like program that could spread through Zephyrian computer systems, but they needed a way to deliver it directly to enemy ships. The answer came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, still serving on Morrison's ship, had been monitoring Zephyrian communications and noticed something important. The aliens were using standard docking protocols when their ships needed to transfer supplies or personnel. If a human ship could get close enough to initiate a docking sequence, they could upload Karen's virus directly into the enemy network. It would be a suicide mission, but it might give Earth the advantage they desperately needed. On Earth's surface, the first Zephyrian landing ships began touching down in major cities around the world. The alien ground forces were impressive, wearing powered armor that could stop human bullets and carrying energy weapons that could melt through steel. They expected to face organized military resistance that would follow predictable patterns. Instead, they found something that confused and frightened them. Major Beth Collins and her Marines in New York City had abandoned traditional defensive positions and scattered throughout the urban landscape. When Zephyrian troops tried to secure city blocks, they found themselves under attack from sewers, rooftops, abandoned buildings, and subway tunnels. Civilian populations did not flee or surrender as expected. Instead, ordinary people fought back with whatever weapons they could find. Construction workers used bulldozers to ram alien vehicles. Police officers coordinated with military units to set up ambushes in familiar neighborhoods. Even children helped by acting as messengers and spotters for human fighters. The Zephyrians had conquered dozens of worlds, but they had never faced an entire species that refused to accept defeat. Every human seemed to believe that dying while fighting was better than living as a slave, and this belief was turning Earth into a nightmare for the invading forces. War Commander Thrackmore watched the reports from his flagship and felt something his species rarely experienced: doubt. The human military was weak and their technology was primitive, just as he had expected. But these creatures fought like nothing he had ever encountered before, turning their apparent weaknesses into devastating weapons against his forces. The invasion had been going on for 2 weeks now, and War Commander Thrackmore was beginning to understand that humans were unlike any species his empire had ever conquered. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching tactical reports from across the Earth, and every single one contained information that made no sense according to Zephyrian military science. On the planet's surface, Major Beth Collins had turned New York City into a maze of death traps for alien forces. Her Marines had learned to use the city's infrastructure against the invaders in ways that no military academy had ever taught. When Zephyrian troops tried to advance down a street, they found manholes that had been turned into explosive devices, and subway tunnels filled with human fighters armed with improvised weapons. The aliens had expected to face an organized army that would fight according to standard military procedures. Instead, they encountered something that seemed completely insane. Human civilians worked alongside professional soldiers, sharing information and resources in ways that violated every rule of proper military hierarchy. Children as young as 12 carried messages between fighting units, while elderly people provided food and medical care to wounded fighters. Captain Rick Turner had survived the destruction of his ship USS Defiance and was now commanding a mixed group of civilian volunteers and military personnel in the ruins of Chicago. His force included construction workers, police officers, firefighters, and even a few circus performers who had exceptional skills with acrobatics and rope climbing. Turner's people had learned to use the city's elevated train system as a network of hidden pathways that allowed them to appear anywhere without warning. The Zephyrians controlled the major roads and had established checkpoints at important intersections, but humans simply ignored the roads entirely. They moved through buildings, sewers, and rooftops, turning the urban landscape into a three-dimensional battlefield that the aliens could not understand or control. When Zephyrian patrols tried to secure a building, they would find it empty, only to come under attack from the building next door or from underneath through basement tunnels. Dr. Karen White's virus program had been successfully uploaded to 3 Zephyrian ships through suicide missions carried out by volunteer pilots. The effects were beginning to show across the enemy fleet as weapon systems malfunctioned at critical moments, and shield generators failed without apparent cause. But the real breakthrough came when Karen discovered something even more important about alien psychology. The Zephyrians were having trouble adapting to human tactics because their entire culture was based on hierarchy and predictability. Every member of their society had a specific role and followed orders without question. Their military operated like a perfectly designed machine, with each part knowing exactly what it was supposed to do. This system had made them incredibly effective at conquering other organized civilizations, but it left them helpless when faced with the chaotic creativity of human resistance. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Parker was coordinating Earth's orbital defenses when he noticed that Zephyrian ship movements were becoming less coordinated. Enemy vessels that should have been working together were making mistakes in timing and positioning. Some ships were firing at targets that other ships were trying to capture. The alien fleet was still powerful, but it was no longer operating as a unified force. Parker realized that humans were not just fighting a war, they were teaching the galaxy a lesson about the difference between strength and power. The Zephyrians had strength in their advanced technology in large numbers, but humans had power in their ability to adapt, improvise, and turn any situation to their advantage. Captain Morrison led another attack against a Zephyrian supply convoy near the moon, using tactics that would have horrified any civilized military commander. His ships approached the enemy formation by hiding behind chunks of space debris, making themselves nearly invisible to alien sensors. When they emerged to attack, they did not target the most important ships first, as logic would dictate. Instead, Morrison's forces attacked randomly, hitting supply ships, escort vessels, and command ships with equal intensity. The Zephyrian commander tried to reorganize his formation to respond to the threat, but every time he moved his ships into a defensive pattern, the humans would change their attack method completely. It was like trying to fight an enemy that had no strategy except to do whatever was most unexpected. The space battle ended with the complete destruction of the Zephyrian convoy, but not because human ships were superior to alien technology. The victory came because human commanders thought like individuals rather than parts of a machine, making decisions that no computer could predict and no military manual could prepare for. General Frank Davis, Earth's senior military commander, was planning what he called Operation Persistent Thunder from his command center deep beneath the Colorado mountains. The operation was not designed to defeat the Zephyrian invasion through any single decisive battle. Instead, it was intended to make the occupation of Earth so costly and difficult that the aliens would eventually decide to leave on their own. Every day that the invasion continued, human resistance became stronger and more organized. Civilians learned to make explosives from household chemicals, while professional soldiers taught ordinary people how to use captured alien weapons. The longer the Zephyrians stayed on Earth, the more dangerous every street corner and building became for their forces. Davis had studied the history of every human war and revolution, looking for lessons that could be applied to fighting an alien invasion. He discovered that humans had a unique advantage over any other species in the galaxy. They had thousands of years of experience fighting each other, which had taught them every possible way that warfare could be conducted. The Zephyrians were learning that occupying Earth was like trying to hold water in their hands. Every time they thought they had control of an area, human fighters would slip away and appear somewhere else. Every strategic position they captured became a target for constant attack. Every supply convoy they sent became a hunting opportunity for human raiders. War Commander Thrackmore received a message from the Zephyrian High Command asking for a status report on the invasion. For the first time in his military career, he did not know what to tell his superiors. By every measure that mattered, his forces were winning the war. They controlled Earth's major cities, had destroyed most of the human fleet, and had killed millions of enemy soldiers and civilians. But somehow the humans were getting stronger instead of weaker, and the cost of maintaining the occupation was growing every day. Thrackmore was beginning to suspect that his empire had made a terrible mistake by attacking Earth, but he was not yet ready to admit that the invasion had been a failure. 3 months after the invasion began, something happened that shocked the entire galaxy. War Commander Thrackmore appeared on communication screens across known space, his gray face bearing scars from recent battles and his yellow eyes filled with something that no Zephyrian had ever shown before: fear. To the Galactic Council and all civilized species, Thrackmore began, his voice no longer carrying the confident arrogance that had marked the beginning of his invasion. The Zephyrian Empire hereby withdraws all forces from the Sol system and renounces any claim to the planet Earth. Let this message serve as a warning to all who might consider similar actions in the future. The humans are not like other species. They do not fight to win battles or capture territory. They fight to ensure that anyone who attacks their home can never truly possess it. The transmission continued with details that would change how every species in the galaxy viewed humanity forever. Thrackmore described cities that had become impossible to hold, where every building contained hidden fighters and every street corner could explode without warning. He spoke of human civilians who fought with the same intensity as professional soldiers, and of children who carried messages through combat zones that his best troops could not safely traverse. Admiral Jake Morrison, who had been promoted after his heroics during the defense of Luna Station, stood before the reconvened Galactic Council to address the representatives of hundreds of alien species. The council chamber was completely silent as Morrison walked to the speaking platform, his simple human form dwarfed by the massive aliens around him. "Honored delegates," Morrison began, "you have all watched our conflict with the Zephyrian Empire, and many of you have wondered how such a small and apparently weak species could resist such a powerful invasion force. The answer is simple, but it is something that most of you will find difficult to understand." Morrison paused and looked around the chamber at the assembled aliens, noting how many of them seemed nervous in his presence now. 3 months ago, humans had been considered the weakest members of the Galactic Council, a primitive species that needed protection from more advanced civilizations. Now, these same aliens looked at him with a mixture of respect and concern. "Earth can never be taken," Morrison continued. "Not because of our technology, not because of our weapons, not because of our numbers. Earth can never be taken because of who we are as a people. Humans do not simply defend our homeworld, we make it indefensible to anyone else." President Helen Carter worked with Ambassador Julie Grant to negotiate new treaties that would recognize Earth's unique status in the galactic community. The other species, having witnessed humanity's capacity for both destruction and restraint during the Zephyrian War, were eager to grant Earth special privileges in exchange for human commitment to galactic peacekeeping operations. The negotiations were unlike anything the Galactic Council had ever conducted. Usually, powerful species dictated terms to weaker ones, but the aliens who had refused to help Earth during the invasion now found themselves asking for human protection and military assistance. Dozens of worlds that had been conquered by the Yao, Zephyrians sent desperate messages requesting human-led liberation forces. Dr. Karen White's research facility became the center of a new interspecies scientific exchange program. Alien scientists from across the galaxy came to Earth to study human approaches to technology and warfare, trying to understand how such an apparently chaotic species could be so devastatingly effective in combat. Her laboratory was flooded with requests from species that wanted to learn human methods of problem-solving and tactical thinking. What the alien scientists discovered was that humanity's greatest strength was not any single innovation or weapon. Instead, it was their ability to find opportunity in chaos and turn apparent disadvantages into decisive advantages. Humans did not follow predictable patterns because they treated every situation as unique, requiring its own creative solution. Captain Rick Turner, who had survived the urban fighting in Chicago, was appointed as the first human instructor at the Galactic Military Academy. His job was to teach alien officers about unconventional warfare and irregular tactics. Turner's classes were popular with students from species that had previously been conquered by larger empires, but they horrified military professionals from more traditional civilizations. "The key to fighting like a human," Turner explained to a classroom full of confused alien cadets, "is to remember that there are no rules except the ones you make for yourself. When your enemy expects you to retreat, attack. When they expect you to attack, disappear. When they think they have you trapped, use their trap against them." Major Beth Collins became Earth's leading expert on urban resistance warfare, writing training manuals that were distributed to defense forces throughout the galaxy. Her experiences in New York City had proven that any population could become unconquerable if they were willing to abandon traditional military thinking and embrace the human approach to combat. The psychological impact of the Zephyrian defeat spread far beyond the military sphere. Species throughout the galaxy began to reconsider their assumptions about strength, power, and the nature of civilization itself. The aquatic keepers of Aquarius, who had claimed their ships were too slow to help Earth, suddenly discovered ways to increase their fleet speed when they requested human protection from aggressive neighbors. The silicon-based builders of Titan Prime, who had experienced technical difficulties during Earth's crisis, found their engineering problems mysteriously resolved when they offered to share their construction technology with human colonies. Every species that had abandoned Earth during the invasion now competed to prove their friendship and loyalty to humanity. The Zephyrian War established humanity as the galaxy's premier defensive specialists and peacekeeping force. Human military advisors were stationed on dozens of worlds, teaching other species how to defend themselves using tactics that emphasized creativity over technology and determination over numerical superiority. More importantly, the war sent a message that echoed throughout the cosmos and would be remembered for generations to come. There was indeed one rule that aliens should never break, but it was not the law written in stone tablets on space stations. The real rule was simpler and more fundamental than any legislation. Earth could never be taken, not because it was protected by galactic law, but because humanity had made it impossible to hold. Any species that attacked Earth would face an enemy that grew stronger under pressure, that turned every disadvantage into a weapon, and that would never stop fighting as long as a single human remained alive. The galaxy had learned that some worlds were never meant to be conquered. They existed as eternal reminders that in a universe full of predators, the most dangerous species might be the one that appeared to be prey. Earth stood as proof that the strongest fortress was not built of metal and energy shields, but of the unbreakable will of people defending their home.